Have you ever opened up a project, looked at a single file, and just felt your stomach drop? You know the one. It's so big, so tangled, it's practically a disaster waiting to happen. Well, today we're diving into the story of a real software behemoth, a 6,000-line problem, and the incredible journey to finally take it apart.
Okay, look at this number, 6,224. So, what do you think this is? A user count? Number of bugs squashed? Nope. It's something way, way more dramatic. Just keep it in the back of your mind for a minute.
All right, so here's our game plan. First, we're going to define the problem itself. Then, we'll look at the blueprint for how it got fixed, which really boils down to two huge moves, a massive migration to React and a totally new data model. And finally, we'll get to the good part, the payoff in stability and speed.
Remember that number I showed you? Well, here's the reveal. 6,224 is the exact number of lines of plain, old-school JavaScript that were deleted from one single file. A file named compositionsapp.js. This thing was the ticking time bomb at the very heart of the application, trying to render the entire UI all by itself. Just imagine that.
And this slide right here, it just lays the whole problem out. On the left, before, was just pure chaos. You had these disconnected lists of data, and you had to rely on fragile math just to figure out which line of dialogue belonged to which scene. It was so brittle that, as the logs show, a slightly weird script format could crash the whole thing. But the after, that is just beautiful logic. It's built to work just like a real film production where every scene is its own neat little package holding all its own stuff. It just makes sense.
So that's the big question, right? How do you even begin to tackle a 6,000-line monster like this without bringing the entire system crashing down? Well, you do it with a plan, a really good one. This wasn't some panicked late-night rewrite because something broke. No, this was a deliberate strategic move that was in the works for a long, long time. And we know this because we can actually see the evidence in the project docs. There's a file called react-migrationplan.md that lays it all out. They plan to move everything over to React in phases. And right there, clear as day, the goal for phase 4 was to finally, officially kill the rendering happening in that compositions-app.js file. This was foresight, not firefighting. So let's get into the first part of this massive solution, the Great Migration to React. This was all about replacing that one giant monolith with a modern, clean, and understandable component tree. Just look at the scale of this thing. These bars tell the whole story. Yeah, over 6,200 lines were deleted from that one file, but look at what was added. Nearly 7,800 new lines, spread out across the project in a much more organized way. This wasn't just cleaning house. This was a complete architectural transplant. And the result of all that work? That one terrifying file, that single point of failure, was replaced by 30 brand new modular and much easier to manage files. Think about that. 30 specialized tools replacing one clumsy, broken sledgehammer. And this table gives you a little taste of what that specialization looks like. If you dig into the changelog from March 20th, you can see that this refactor introduced 16 totally new core components. Things like a dedicated sidebar for navigation, a specific modal just for editing dialogue. Each piece has one job, and it does that one job well. And that is the bedrock of a stable application. But, a pretty user interface is only half the battle. To really, truly solve the problem, the team had to do something just as important. They had to completely restructure the data itself so that the code finally understood how the real world actually works. They called it the scene-grouped data model. And it's a simple idea, but it's so powerful. Basically, a scene is a thing, an object, and that object owns everything inside of it. The dialogue, the actions, the camera shots. It's not just about writing cleaner code, it's about making the code speak the same language as the actual filmmakers using the tool. This slide really just nails the transformation. Before, you had these disconnected lists floating around, held together by risky math. Afterwards, you have this beautiful, logical, nested structure. And the impact is huge. It completely gets rid of that fragile index math, which means fewer bugs. But maybe more importantly, it makes the data so much more intuitive. Anyone can look at it and just get it. Okay, so this was obviously a ton of work, a huge undertaking. So what was the bottom line? What was the actual tangible payoff for doing all this? Well, the payoff was massive, and it came in two flavors: rock-solid stability and a serious boost in speed. See, this wasn't just about making things look nice for the developers. It solved real, painful problems for the people actually using the app.
Let's just run through the highlight reel of bugs that this refactor completely wiped out. That crazy off-by-one error where you generate shots for one scene and it would mess up a different one? Gone. Previews that would just randomly fail? Fixed. The entire screen flickering every time you clicked a button? Solved. The new architecture wasn't just better, it was fundamentally correct. And on top of being more stable, the app got a whole lot faster. By splitting up data contexts, background AI work stopped forcing the entire UI to redraw itself for no reason. They use memoization, which is just a fancy way of telling a component, hey, don't re-render unless you absolutely have to, which made interactions way smoother. And with progressive loading, users started seeing results right away. These are huge quality of life wins. I think this quote from the project's own documentation just sums it all up perfectly. It went from a fragile system literally held together by math and hope to a robust model that actually understands the work it's doing. And that didn't just bring stability, it opened the door for brand new features down the line. And that kind of leaves us with one final thought. We've all seen one of these, right? So I'll ask you, what's the biggest ticking time bomb in a project that you know? Is it a giant file, a tangled mess of a database? And what would its great migration look like if you could actually pull it off? It's definitely something to think about.